Today's conversation is sponsored by First Generation Capital Partners. If you're an accredited investor and you want to know about how we're helping other accredited investors keep more of their income, go to firstgencp.com/going long.
Failure is so good in this business. Now, you got to make sure the failure isn't fatal.
Yeah.
But we talk about it every day. We learn so much more. We learn nothing when we succeed.
You're listening to the Going Long podcast with Billy Keels, the #1 podcast for long-distance real asset investing.
Welcome to the Going Long podcast. We're back once again to continue to help to educate you so you feel much more comfortable as well as confident investing beyond your backyard. And yes, I'm your host, Billy Keels, and I am here to welcome you back to another conversation. Today is going to be another one of these amazing guy who's super niche, really is going to help you learn more about a particular space. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in just a second. But hey, listen, you know I love doing this podcast. I love being able to share the guest's understanding with you. And if you want to share the conversation or take a screenshot and share it on social media, feel free to do that. Also, would love those honest written reviews as well as ratings. That's what helps us to continue to move up the podcast charts, still up in the top 1.5% of podcasts, thanks to you. So feel free to share it. Feel free for your honest written reviews as well as ratings. And if you want to check out any of the previous podcasts, just go to firstgencp.com/podcasts and check them out there. So listen, today's conversation, super niche in the self-storage space. We've got a guy who really knows what he's talking about. His name is Drew Dolan, and we're going to get to that just after this. Are you a busy, high-paid professional, someone that in the previous 2 years has earned $200,000 and is expected to earn $200,000 this year? Or maybe if you filed jointly, previously you've earned $300,000 the previous 2 years and you're also expected to do that this year. Or maybe if not, either individually or jointly, you have $1 million in net worth, not including your primary residence. If you meet any of these criteria, then you're someone that the IRS considers to be an accredited investor. That probably means you're someone like an enterprise software sales executive. You may be an executive in a major corporation. You may be a doctor. You may be a lawyer, maybe a high-paid consultant. You may even work for a major sports franchise. The thing I know you have in common is that you continue to do the hard work. Like you're doing 100% of the work and you're only bringing home 50% of the reward because you continue to get crushed by your income taxes. If you are tired of this situation and you're looking for a new solution, then go to firstgencp.com/going long. When you get there, that's going to help you to start the journey so that you can begin to take back control of your taxes, take control of your time. And then also that means you're going to be able to spend more of the time that you want with the people that you love the most. And that is the way that you're going to get the personal freedom that you're looking for. So if you're looking to take back control, go ahead and go to firstgencp.com/going long and see how we can help you today. So if you want to know how using data technology to select your next investment properties, how that can help you to get to your long distance investing goals much sooner, then guess what? Today's a conversation that you're going to want to listen to until the very last word. You know why? Well, because today's guest, check this out, not only has a Bachelor of Science in Industrial Engineering, he also was a sales engineer who after 5.5 years decided to pivot. I really want him to tell us about this. And actually, even in 2005, he became employee #1 of a previous company. And so he's seen probably what growth is all about. And I'm sure he's going to talk to us about that. From there, he transitioned to fund manager. And today, not only is he a member of the Young Presidents Organization, he is also, most importantly, the principal and fund manager of DXD Capital. It gives me great pleasure to welcome to today's conversation, Mr. Drew Dolan. Drew, welcome to the show, man.
Billy, thank you. That was an awesome intro. Well done.
Thank you very much. I've done this once or twice. But along the way, I'm still learning all kinds of stuff. I like to have fun here, man. Everybody likes to have fun. And today we have a true expert in a very specific niche. And I know you're going to tell us all about that, Drew. But the thing is, you also know I love asking questions, man. I'm going to ask you 5. You're going to get 2 in the beginning. You're going to get 3 in the end. In the middle, you're going to get a whole lot of questions. I just don't know how many yet, and I don't know what they are. So I want the Going Long family to start to get to know you. So help us understand, Drew, where is it that you call home in the U.S.?
I live in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Fantastic. So I think that's out west somewhere, right? For those of us who are not from
stuck between Texas and Arizona. It's not Mexico, like we say. It's not quite Mexico, but it's definitely not new.
There you go. I like that. I like that. There you go. Awesome. So help us understand then, Drew. So you're out in New Mexico and, yeah, man, I love positivity here. So what's the most positive thing that's happened to you in the last 24 hours?
Boy, we had a neighborhood meeting last night for a self-storage project in Albuquerque, as we develop all over the country, and to find a deal in our hometown is fantastic. And it went really well. And at the end of it, we actually got a round of applause from the neighbors.
Wow.
Now, there's still some work we need to do. And, we've got some meat left on that bone, but they were just so happy we were open and upfront and willing to speak with them that felt really good. It's just so positive.
All right. Love that, man. And so, yeah. And of course, whenever you can get the hometown crowd behind you, that's always a fantastic thing. And so I appreciate you sharing that positivity with us. And here's the thing, Drew, I have to I know we're just meeting, but I have to be very transparent with you. I am one of those people who tends to keep the bar really, really high. Sometimes that means that I'm doing things that are not even possible. Things like trying to tell your entire backstory in 2.5 seconds. Never going to happen, right? You've done way too much, man. You've impacted too many lives. So here's the thing. I'm going to ask you for your help as well. If you could talk to us about your backstory, if you can tell your backstory in your own words, and you can use a lot more than 2.5 seconds because it's your own backstory. And then along the way, Drew, if you could also help us to understand some of the major decisions that you've made to get to this point in your journey. And then we'll see where you and I take the conversation from there.
Killer. Thanks, Billy.
Yeah, man.
I'll start at college. I got an engineering degree. Took me a lot longer than 4 years. I did not have great grades, but I had a fantastic resume, which was really to offset the bad grades. And so coming out of college, I'd worked for Boeing up on their 737 line, for Intel, the largest producer of copper cable in the world. I had like 5 different great internships. And what I learned from those internships is that I actually didn't want to be an engineer. It was kind of this oh shit moment of, you're in year 4 out of 5 of being an engineer, but yet it's not exactly what you want to do, but you're too far in. And so I took a job in sales, a company that only hires engineers to do their sales. And it was 100% commission sales from day one. So they were really looking for people like me who had an engineering degree, knew how to think like an engineer, but didn't want to be an engineer, and really were motivated to go out and work hard and motivated by money. And so I took that job. What really sold me, I went to school in Arizona State. So they had a job opening in San Diego. And any 22, 23-year-old kid that gets offered a job in San Diego comes up, it's like, bam, kind of no brainer. And I think they knew that. So I was so excited to move out there. And I did that job for about 6 years. It was fantastic. I mean, you're almost like your own little company, because the harder you work, the more results you get, the more money you make, and it just goes on and on. It really taught me that relationships matter. Yes, you got to follow up and do what you said and do the right thing and work hard, but without relationships, you're just, if they don't like you, you don't have a chance of being successful. And so it really is, how do you get people to want to do business with you? After about 5 years of doing that, I had one of my customers was a developer that was developing all over the West Coast. And I just loved these guys. They were having fun. They were calling shots. They were making money. They were just great to deal with. And this light bulb went on in my head of like, why am I not doing that? At the same time, I lost a project that I had worked on for years. And I lost it for the dumbest reason. I'll just make it real short. We were designing HVAC systems. It was a company called Train. And we could spend years designing a chiller plant, in this case, a chiller plant for a biopharmaceutical company. The guy that made, and I had everything lined up from the engineer to the contractor to the owner, but the owner's rep who was making the decision had a really bad piece of Train equipment at his house. This had nothing to do with what I was selling or designing. And he killed that project for us because of something that was totally out of my control. And this light bulb went on, and it was like, you like control. You need to go find something where you're in control. And so I met my wife in San Diego. She's from Albuquerque. We moved back to Albuquerque because no girl from San Diego is really going to move to Albuquerque. That just doesn't happen. I had to find the only girl from Albuquerque out there. And I got hooked up with a developer who was very entrepreneurial. He turned out to be my mentor. We spent, 50% of our days together. And I just started taking bits and learning. What I did not appreciate about real estate development is how broad the scope of what you need to know is. You got to know a little bit about architecture and construction, how to negotiate, how to read a legal doc and negotiate a legal doc, bank financing, equity, structure. I mean, it's just this enormous skill set. And as a 27, 28-year-old, what I was shocked with is just how much time it took me to figure it out. Like I thought, a couple months, I'll be rocking this. I think about it like this. It took me 2 years just to be somewhat productive, and another 3 years after that to really know that something I did, an idea I had, could make money. So for about 15 years, we were really great ground up developers of a broad range of products. Multifamily, office, retail, hospitality, and then I jumped into storage about 5 years ago. And that's where I really got my first exposure to storage. And that, kind of led on to what we're doing today at DXD.
Wow, fantastic, man. So many different experiences. I think back to you talking about the very beginning, not a very good student. So you really focused on not academia, but real life experience and getting the internships and working in different places. And also it's really interesting. My wife and I, she's from Spain, she's from Barcelona, and we met in France, and now we live in Barcelona. And so this is kind of very interesting, right? These dynamics, how these things happen. But you talked about having this experience at one role, growing it, then realizing there were things that could be outside of your span of control that could affect you, right? I think that happens a lot. And many times people don't know how to deal with that. You pivoted, right? You decided, hey, listen, I need to figure out something else. But maybe you could talk to us through that period, because and the reason I ask you this, Drew, is because I think that's something that happens to a lot of people. But sometimes when you recognize that you need more control, sometimes you just think, well, since I'm not going to have it, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. And eventually I'll just be miserable and everybody else around me will be miserable. But you chose to do something else. So maybe you could help that person who's gone through that or is maybe feeling that today and think, man, I need to do something else. What helped you to be able to make that pivot?
Well, I certainly thought it was going to happen faster. What I think it's all the little steps. It's listening to this podcast. It's picking up the Wall Street Journal every day. It's reading your local newspaper. It's Googling something you're interested in. Those little steps matter. There's so much more exposure today than 20 years ago when I got in the business, to different things. But at the end of the day, there is no substitute for just doing it. You can't understand all the little, and development is just this enormous gray area. It starts from, I think about this opportunity to, I just made money. And then there are 1,000 steps in between. What I really love about real estate is very rarely are any one of those steps fatal. There's not like, I make one mistake and you're in trouble. Well, I say that in that you never want to over leverage something or have bad partners, but there's a lot of little nuances to real estate. And if you and I, Billy, had the same opportunity, I can guarantee that we would not look at it the same way. And in that sense, real estate is the most creative business. I mean, it's almost like, you're an artist. You get to do whatever you want to make money. And depending on what your goals are. So there's only so much reading and listening you can do before you just got to try something.
Yep.
And failure is so good in this business. Now, you got to make sure the failure isn't fatal.
Yeah.
But we talk about it every day. We learn so much more. We learn nothing when we succeed. But when a neighborhood meeting goes bad for an approval, or cost comes in high, or design was bad, or we didn't lease up in time, that's when we really learn something. And it's okay to make mistakes. It's just not okay to make the same mistakes.
I love that. Not okay to make the same mistakes. Making mistakes is something that is okay and should be a part of the process, right? One of the things that you mentioned earlier, or actually even before I asked that question, because one of the things that you did say is you weren't a good student, right? But you enjoyed and you focused on the doing, and you talked about the internships that you had. And I'm curious, to what extent do you think your own life philosophy is playing out in terms of the point that you put on doing? I agree with you, by the way, but I think because there are a lot of people that happen to be like I was early on, and I'm still a recovering perfectionist, where you think, wow, you got to learn everything. You got to, get it perfectly theoretically. But I'm just curious to your background and kind of what you led with in the very beginning, how you believe that's influencing and, potentially helping you be even better at what it is that you're doing.
Yeah, two comments on that. I mean, industrial engineers are all focused on efficiency. That's what we do. Efficiency in manufacturing, efficiency in design. And so what we do at DXD is we repeat the same thing again and again and again. We just build Class A climate-controlled storage in fantastic markets, but one might be in Bristol, Rhode Island, and we got a deal in Maui, two very different markets. And so what I do think about constantly is how to be more efficient, from I have an idea or the data says go here to we make money. In real estate, it could take 5 years to make money. So it takes a long time. Think about being a developer or learning from a development standpoint is just whatever you like doing, you should gravitate to spending more time doing that. So I'll give you an example. One of my developer friends, he loves design. He spends a lot of time on the design because that matters to him. What it looks like on the outside, the inside, that's where he gets his greatest reward. That's not where I get my greatest reward. I love doing things in different places. I love when we do a deal in Maui or we do a deal in Miami. That's what excites me. And so I think about how to get more efficient. We got a guy on our team that loves just data on performance. That's what he loves. And so you got to do a lot of different things, but figure out what really motivates you and spend an enormous amount of time doing that. And some of the other stuff will just fall into place because that's what you'll be extraordinary at.
Yeah, absolutely love that. And makes so much sense. And being able to focus, find your zone of genius and become extraordinary. Just because you got good grades in school doesn't mean that can be replicated, and vice versa. So find what it is that you like, focus on that, double down, and magic things can happen. So you just talked about one other thing, right? You talked about Connecticut. I think you said in Hawaii. Music to my ears, by the way, because as you know, I'm over here in Europe and have been investing exclusively back in the US. So very much long distance. Yeah. I know one of the things that, as you look for those efficiencies in a very hyper niche market, location is not one of the main barriers. I think that that's completely contrarian. It sounds like, tens of thousands of people around the globe also think it's contrarian because they keep coming back here listening, they're learning from you. But I'm always interested in understanding, and if you can help us understand, Drew, like it's so contrarian, but what is it that allows you and helps you to continue to say, look, the long distance investing philosophy, i.e. not being held by the geographic barrier, is something that is not only possible, it's something that when done properly is a game changer. Maybe you could talk to us a little bit about that philosophy and how that's come to be for you and DXD Capital.
Yeah, I mean, from your listeners in Europe, the states in America are like different countries. Like New Mexico is completely different from Texas. from Rhode Island. And so really there's a bit of, I'm betting on this state. Yes, it's under the US umbrella, but there are obvious states that are going to be more successful, that have better fundamentals than other states. They're the states that are doing well: Florida, Texas, Arizona, Utah, Colorado, blah, blah, blah. And then there's states that are not doing well because they're hampered by, debt, quality of life's not good, taxes are horrible. I'm not going to mention any of those, but we know where they are. The cool thing I love is just this in storage. One of the reasons we use data at a very high level, and we use lots of data to drive our investment decisions, because storage at its core is a commodity asset. If you wanted storage tomorrow, Billy, you would say, how close is it to my house? What's the price? And is that unit size I want, the 10 by 10 available? And you would not care whether it said public storage or extra space on it. That doesn't matter. It almost like has zero brand loyalty. Yeah, you want it to be clean and look good and safe and secure, but you don't care about operators. And so because of how much of a commodity it is, data really can drive investment decisions. And so what we get to do is look at massive amounts of data all over the US and decide. But the key there is the same data that's interesting in Las Vegas is not actually interesting in Nevada. It's to understand what's going on in those individual markets and say, why is this different and why is it better? And I'll give you an example. New Jersey is not a high growth market like a Florida. However, the rates, which we look at first, because rates drive the supply demand balance or imbalance, the rates are the same. The rates are the same. There's no growth. Why would you do a deal in New Jersey? The reason you do a deal in New Jersey is because it's very hard to get something approved. If it took you 3 years to get approval to build 100,000 square feet of storage, that means it's going to take somebody else 3 years. And that's going to slow them down to competing with you. Versus Miami, the growth might be 2% a year, but yet you might have more competition. So It's almost like every city's different, every state's different. You're making bets on who you think are going to be the winners and losers. And it all comes down to, you just can't ignore the real estate. The real estate's what drives self-storage.
Trusting that you're enjoying today's conversation. And you know what? If you're tired of getting crushed by taxes and you're looking for greater freedom to be able to choose what you want to do when you want to do it, make sure that you go to firstgencp.com/going-long and see how we can help you today. Let's get back to the conversation. And so recognizing that this can be perceived as a commodity and the real estate driving self-storage, you're also doing something very, I believe, right, based on what I've read and what some of the things, and I'd love for you to expand on this, but you really found this very unique intersection, right, between that commodity, which is the tangible asset, as well as the intangible, which is the data. And so you're being able to leverage that in a way that maybe many that are in your same space are not. So maybe talk to us a little bit about that intersection and how you've maybe started talking a little bit about it now, but how you're really leveraging these two tangible and intangible assets to really drive value for investors.
Yeah. DXD is like this hybrid of a real estate developer, private equity firm, tech company. I have the real estate background and the private equity background. For 20 years, all I've done is ground up development. My partner that started DXD also started a company 6 years ago called Radius Plus. Radius Plus is the best, most comprehensive data source for everything self-storage. And self-storage is decades behind other asset classes in terms of the capital sophistication and the data that's available. So what Radius did starting 6 years ago, and nobody had ever done this before they did it, they went and identified all 50,000 self-storage facilities in the country. Nobody had any idea 5 years ago, 6 years ago, where they were. And then they identified the size, the location, is it climate, is it non-climate, every attribute they could come up with. And then 35,000 of those 55,000 publish their rates online every day. And those rates sometimes change and sometimes don't. So Radius every day goes to 35,000 websites and scrapes that data and breaks it down by what is 5x5 going for, 10x10, what's the first floor versus the ground floor going for. So they have all this enormous data. They built a platform that now is the industry standard for what everybody uses, whether you're a developer, banker, broker, investor, owner. You go to Radius and you can understand instantly what's going on in a market. And the thesis behind DXD is really for the entire history of self-storage. And as a developer who developed prior to DXD self-storage, we would start with a site. I know Albuquerque. I would guess this part of Albuquerque looks good. I'll go find a piece of land, and then I'll go run all the data to see if that site works. It worked, you go. We do it the opposite. We can look at Albuquerque as an entire city and say, based on these metrics, pop growth, new apartments, new single family, the rent trajectory, all these things say, here's where we should go. And then we look for land in that area. So it's almost like reverse engineering the opportunity of where you go. Mm-hmm. And what we've been able to do is roll that out on a macro level and to do it for the entire United States. Now, I will say the data doesn't take you all the way there. It's still real estate. And I did a lot of senior living prior to DXD. We built 11 memory care, assisted living, independent living facilities. Mm-hmm. Here's the thing about how to think about senior living. It's an operating business that utilizes the real estate to make money. Self-storage is a real estate play that has an operational component just to drive. And so operations is critical for senior living. Operations is important for self-storage, but you make your money when you decide I'm going to build what right here. That's the decision.
Right.
And then, it's tweaks after that.
So when I like the juxtaposition there at the end with the two different, your same piece of land, but how are you using it? Is it really focused more on the utilization of the space, or are you generating a business utilizing the space, right? Kind of those two different examples. And I appreciate you being able to bring together the intangible and tangible to be able to make better decisions. So someone who is, maybe this is their first time and they think, wow, this development thing, and this is self-storage. I've thought about this, as an investor, why would I be interested in this? Why not? Maybe you could talk to us a little bit also for that person who's, maybe they're accredited, maybe they're not. They've heard a little bit about it, but Drew, you're the first person that's really going to be able to kind of give them the high level. Like, what are some of the things as an investor you should be looking at, or in your opinion, you found those investors that are interested in working with you today that they've thought about, and you've helped them to see both the pros to the self-storage space and specifically what you're doing in your niche. And then also, because there's nothing like, there's no perfect investment. So there's always something that you should always be thinking about as a potential con. So maybe you could talk to us a little bit of the pros and cons of where you are in the self-storage space.
When I first got into development, a very seasoned banker once told me, I'd rather do a B deal with an A developer than an A deal with a B developer. And that really resonated, and it continued to resonate because I realized how many problems a developer has to solve, and that there are 1,000 decisions and 1,000 things that can go wrong. I mean, as a developer, this is a risky business. That's what we do. I really think our job as a developer is to manage risk. There are some risk items you can remove, but other things you can't control. And it's to put yourself in a situation where that risk is managed as best possible. So I really think it starts with, who's the sponsor? Have they done storage before? Do they know real estate development? Do they have a track record? Who's the team? Because anybody that's like, hey, I got this fantastic site, all the data says it looks good, but I've never developed a self-storage project, something's going to go wrong, and they're just not going to be able to handle it like somebody seasoned. And so if that team or people or experience box doesn't get checked, it's just not worth taking another step, because of course they're going to tell you all the good things about that deal, but they're not necessarily going to tell you all the bad things. That brings up a point when some of my longest investors, and I think of one specifically who's like a complete vet. We drove around one day. He just wanted to see all the deals, and he did not want to see any of the good deals. He only said, "Tell me what went wrong with that. What's your worst deal? What'd you do here when that happened? How'd you handle that?" He wanted the war stories. The war stories told him that you had enough scars that he should invest with you, not "I crushed it here," because everybody can make that stuff up. But how did you handle the downturn? And so I don't know if I've beaten this one enough, but I think it starts with the people.
Yeah, so it starts with the people. There is no perfect investment. It's also looking for the things like the experience, and a lot of that, I guess I would relate it to. That's that old. What's the quote Mike Tyson said? Everything's perfect, and you've got the perfect plan until you get punched in the face or something like that. And so you want to understand, is the team that you're working with, have they been proverbially, in the boxing match, punched in the face enough times to really understand, what's going to happen? Because ultimately, as you said, there are risks with any type of investment, and it's a matter of how are you going to be able to mitigate the risks. So, maybe talk to us a little bit about the option, because I know you talk also too about funds, and so sometimes people are, as a fund manager, kind of talk to us about what are some of the well, I guess a similar thing, right? What are some of the pros and cons of as they model that has funds, especially if you're thinking about it from the investor's point of view?
Yeah, great question. Because for the first 15 years of my career, we raised equity on a project by project basis. Like, here's a project. Do you like it? Yes. And then a couple things happened. One, we were what I called always on the equity raising hamster wheel. We never got off the hamster wheel because we were doing more projects.
Yeah.
And two, we started to hear from our investors that if we presented them 10 deals a year, but they only invested in 5, they missed the other 5. Some of those other 5 did really well. It's like we didn't get the diversity, because you're going to have deals that overperform and deals that underperform. And so our investors really said to us, "Hey, how can I invest in everything you're doing?" And so we said, "Okay, we're going to do a fund that's going to give you access to everything we do for the next 3 years. And it's going to spread that risk out, good deals offset bad deals." And that absolutely worked. The difference about funds is, and I shouldn't say every fund, but every fund I've done, every typical real estate fund, is they're discretionary, meaning the fund manager gets to make the decision. What you're doing as an investor is just investing in that manager. That manager is going to create a box of what they want to do, but they're not going to necessarily show you the actual deals. They might just show you a concept deal. So it is back to, I'm investing in a team, and think about it that way. Versus the deal by deal, you're also investing in the team, but you get to see exactly what they're going to do. And that's good because you can proof that deal. That's bad because you might just get one of them, and you might not get that diversity spread out.
Okay. And
the ideal would be if you could find a fund investor who's got a pipeline, which is what we did and what we've always done, because we're always adding deals to the pipeline. And so what we do is we say, here's our next 10 deals. We're going to absolutely do these deals, provided nothing bad happens, like we don't get approval or cost comes in too high. But if somebody can show you a pipeline, that's what should make you feel good about a discretionary investment.
Fantastic. Appreciate you breaking down the funds, also being able to help get some more insight into that, at least the funds that you have managed, and also being able to understand, at the end of the day, it comes back to the team and the team that you're investing with and the individuals within the team and the philosophy, et cetera, that there's alignment. So, I can't believe that it's like we're literally flying through this thing already, Drew. And it's kind of like, hang on a second, man. This flies by so fast. The thing is, we got to get into the going long final 3, man.
Okay,
and the thing is, I never, ever, ever get into the going long final three unless you tell me, because today you are our special guest, unless you tell me that you're absolutely ready to go into the going long final three. So my question for you is, are you ready?
Let's do it.
I think you were kind of born ready, man. I don't think there was going to be an issue at all. So here's the thing. So we started with you over in New Mexico. Now, I'd like to bring things back to this side of the pond, actually, Drew, if you don't mind, because this is my new adopted side of the pond kind of home thing. And I would love, because I happen to know that you are a world traveler, I would love for you to share with us, what is your favorite European city that you've either visited or still on your bucket list to visit?
Well, it's such a tough question because every city I go to, the last one I go to is the one I love the most. Right. I just got back from the UK, from London, and it was just awesome. And I went with a buddy who's doing real estate over there, so I got the whole real estate tour. Wow. So right now, it's my favorite. But I was in Barcelona 2 years ago, and that's my favorite.
Okay.
And then the one that's a little bit off the wall, I got to go to Poland in 99,
wow. Okay.
A couple years after the fall of communism. Yeah. And it was so raw. I felt like I was the only tourist there, and the Polish people are so nice. And so we spent about a week in Krakow, and it's a fantastic city. I know it's changed a ton, but it's the one city I came back. I had zero expectations, and I came back just really loving it.
So you know what? If you're okay with this, Drew, we're going to take Krakow as your answer for your favorite. Perfect. Okay, perfect. Absolutely fantastic. Going against my own Barcelona. I was actually at a black tie wedding on a Monday in London about a couple weeks ago, which was actually over the top. We'll talk about that later. Anyway, so appreciate that. So Krakow, and don't worry, everybody, they'll be listed in the show notes and stuff like that at the end. I do want to talk to you about I really would like your insight, because this question number 2 has a lot to do with, just the things that I've seen and the exposure that I've had to people who are very successful. And I consider you to be someone who's very successful as well. You've done a number of things. You've continuously impacted lots and lots of lives. And so from my interactions with people who are very successful, and hopefully you'll agree with this, that, one of the things that I realize that makes very successful people very different from most is that whenever they put a plan together, they get the team, and then from getting the team together, they go out and they execute perfectly the very first time, which is what allows them to. Don't worry, Drew. It's just a joke.
Holy shit. I thought you'd push pause, Billy. I was like, he just had a reset.
Everybody, Drew, thank you so much, man. He's like suffering from me. He's like, Billy, did you just say that, man? Are you serious? Of course. No. All right. Yeah. So that was kind of a joke. I like to have fun. I told you I like to have fun. So here's the thing, man. Really successful people, it may happen, but the majority of things, they don't get right. They don't get it perfectly the first time. They actually make a lot more mistakes than most people, probably 20 to 50 times more mistakes than most people, but most people don't talk about it. And the first part was a joke. This is definitely not a joke, Drew. So this part is just as true. Because one of the things that I do recognize with really successful people is when they make those 20 to 50 more mistakes than everybody else, every single time they make a relevant mistake, right? A relevant mistake. Without a doubt, they stop. They learn from the mistake. And then what they do after that is amazing. What they typically do is they go out and they put different strategies, tactics, and actions in place to minimize the probability of that exact same mistake happening again. We talked a little bit about this earlier. So I don't want you necessarily to think about the mistake that took place. I really want you to think about the lesson. And what was the lesson that you took away from that learning opportunity, mistake, whatever you want to call it, that lesson that the Going Long family needs to hear today? What's that one lesson?
Yeah. I think when I started in development, you get overwhelmed, like I said in the beginning of the podcast, because you got to know a little bit about everything, and it's like, well, I don't know how to do that. I can't learn that from a book. But what I really appreciated, what somebody told me once is like, you got to get to Z. You're starting at A, you got to get to Z. You have no idea how to get to Z, but you got to get there. So don't get overwhelmed about the whole process. just start to think of how you get to B, and then you get to C, and then you figure out, oh man, I can see D, E, and F pretty clearly now. And then I'll do it again. And yeah, you gotta know Z's attainable, but just break it down. Just start, just show up, just do something. And it's funny. I really think relationships are key in real estate because it's a very open, whether it's a banker or a lawyer or another developer or a broker, people want to help people that are trying.
Yep.
You know, and you show that you're trying and you're putting effort into it. People will help you. Magic things happen. People come out to help.
Yeah.
You know, the world conspires with you. And so don't get overwhelmed. Start somewhere. Just focused on what's next and just keep going.
Yeah, I love that. So being able to focus on what's next, get to Z, but do that step by step. And yeah, I mean, I don't want to add it. I did want to add in something there, but I'm not going to add it. So yeah, just being able to take the next step, one step at a time, get closer to Z, and don't overthink it. So I can't even believe this, man. We're already done. Like, because we're getting to question number 3. And this is really about helping us to fill our minds with knowledge. Drew, can you help us understand what is the one book that you would recommend to the Going Long family today?
Wow. I think on a business level, there's a book called High Rise that's a couple decades old that talks about building a high rise in New York City and all the challenges. You know, those are challenges I'll never face, but I appreciate it. This book is out of print, so you got to find it. But it's a fantastic story of what somebody's got to go through. More on a personal level, there's a book I really love called The Power of One. It's about a young boy who's faced with, adversity, and he just gets through it. And it really is about what one person can do if you try and work hard and show up every day. And I've read that book 3 times. I love going back and reading that book. Every time it's like it's for the first time, and it's just energizing to me.
I love it, man. So we'll do both. We'll take High Rise, and then also to The Power of One. And don't worry, everybody, we're going to make it linkable. It's going to be very simple. So if you're running on the treadmill or in the car or something like that, all you have to do is click a link. We make it really simple for you. And so listen, here's the thing, Drew. I am just thinking about this guy who maybe wasn't such a great college student, but you know what? His resume was fantastic. He was going out, he was getting experience, he was taking action. Not only did he take so much action that he started to gain more and more experience, but he also recognized, like, hey, listen, I want to try and do something different. He went into an engineering sales role, or a sales role for engineers. You understood what it was like to be 100% on commission. Did that, been into different places, been employee number 1 in other places. You've seen it grow. And then you also recognize, well, hang on a second. When things are completely out of my control, that's not necessarily very cool. So how can I do things that are going to help me to have more control and be able to drive value for others? And so really relying less on just the theory, but taking the theory, actually making it practical application experience and being able to derive value for others, finding that world, the world between intangible, tangible assets, and helping to continue to educate the marketplace about the value of development and self-storage and how that can be a part of someone's journey and helping them to get to the investing destination that they want to get to. And so everybody here is already saying, like, Billy, yeah, just get to the point, man. Just ask him the question. So here's the thing. Drew, help us understand, what's the best way for the Going Long family to find out more about you and also what you're doing at DXD Capital?
Yeah, log on. It's real simple. DXD.capital is our website. Throw it in there and we'll get back to you. You can always hit me up on LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn. Follow us at DXD on LinkedIn, or connect with me on LinkedIn if you don't have my email. My email is simple. It's drew@dxd.capital. And look, I love helping people because so many people helped me. Like, I would never be here if I can name you 100 people that took their time for no reason to do something kind for me. And so if I can pay a fraction of that back, I'd be very grateful.
Yeah. So, and I appreciate that, Drew. Once again, everybody, check out dxd.capital. You've got Drew at dxd.capital. Connect with them on LinkedIn. And everybody, you know this already, but when you connect with them on LinkedIn, make sure that you let him know that you've already invested time listening to the conversation, watching the conversation here. It's going to help the two of you build a better connection faster. So with that stated, Drew, I really want to thank you very much, man, on behalf of the entire Going Long family. Really appreciate you investing your time with me and all of us today. And thank you very much, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Billy. Great job. Really nice.
All right. Appreciate it, man. So give me like 10 seconds and then we'll get out of here. Going Long family. Look, Drew, what he helped you understand, bringing the intangible, tangible together. He shared his experience. He's giving you stories. He's even talked to you about going to dxd.capital. Find out more about what they're doing. Reach out to him on LinkedIn, personalized invitation. And most importantly, as he talked about, don't just let this be a theoretical exercise. Take today's conversation, share it with other people, talk about the concepts, and actually take action. Heck, reach out to Dude directly, and you can take the theory and put it into practice. So while you're doing all that, I'll be here preparing the next conversation. So until then, go out and make it a great day, and thank you very much. Trust that you enjoyed today's conversation. And once again, today's conversation was sponsored by First Generation Capital Partners. If you're an accredited investor and want to find out more about how we're helping accredited investors to gain their personal freedom even faster, go to firstgencp.com/going long.